Greetings everyone, my name is Artur Melo, and this is my first presentation for my BA Thesis project. The title of my research is Unscripted Narratives, How RimWorld Generates Emergent Stories Through System Design, and my mentor is Professor Bernd Dimmer. In this research, I explore emergent narrative, a concept coined by Ruth Aylett in 1999 to describe narratives that are dynamically created through the interactions of autonomous intelligent virtual agents and the user. Unlike traditional narratives, emergent stories have no scripts, no predefined dialogues, and often rely on procedural generation in order to achieve user co-authorship. Over the past 25 years, debates have emerged about whether sequences of events in a game can be considered narratives, the potential lack of structure, and the risk of breaking immersion. However, the key factors that differentiate emergent narratives from random events are causality and meaning. Players can recount their experiences with clear causes and consequences, forming impressively interesting and engaging stories, as seen in communities like Dwarf Fortress, where players share what happens to them during their playthroughs. So how are emergent narratives actually achieved? Similarly to tabletop RPGs, designers create a world and a complex system of rules governing player interactions, allowing for stories to be generated dynamically based on dice results or randomly generated numbers, creating different outcomes for each playthrough. A remarkable example is RimWorld, a colony simulation game released in 2013, which successfully creates compelling stories exclusively through its systems. My research will analyze RimWorld as a case study, compare its systems to other games with emergent narrative elements such as The Sims 2 and XCOM 2, and use these findings to develop a framework for designing emergent narrative systems. This framework will highlight both essential design principles and common pitfalls of this storytelling approach. After completing the theoretical part, I will begin developing my project, which is Pen-Sized Tyrants, a colony and political simulation game that incorporates essential emergent narrative principles. In this game, all adults have mysteriously disappeared, leaving children to form factions and fight for resources and territories in order to survive in an urban town. The concept is inspired by the book The Lord of the Flies and movies like The Goonies. What sets Pen-Sized Tyrants apart from games like Banished or Frostpunk is that the player doesn't control the characters directly, except for the faction leader. The other children may or may not follow commands, depending on how the player communicates with them. Each character is procedurally generated with unique traits like name, nickname, age, sex, and personality. Since the player can only influence their group through speech, persuasion becomes key. For example, if food is running low, the player might propose a mission to a supermarket. They can choose to give a logical and emotional or intimidating speech based on their character skills to convince the faction to do what they want. However, each child has different personality traits. A character with a baby in the woods personality tends to respond negatively to threatening speeches, for example. This speech system alone can create small dynamic situations, but the game will feature several other interlocking systems, creating a chain reaction of events that result in comedic, tragic, and dramatic stories, potentially leading the player to become a tyrant over their own small urban kingdom. Since I don't aim to complete the whole project within such a short time frame, Professor Bernd suggested that I write a GDD instead. This will include a detailed description of all systems, the setting, and some concept art. I'm truly passionate about this topic and I really believe in my game's potential, so I plan to continue developing it in the near future. Here's my timetable and references for those who might be interested. Thank you for listening.